Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening to you. It's Wednesday, November 25th. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and late this afternoon, county supervisors voted to approve $20 million in COVID relief funds, the money to keep those in desperate need afloat during this pandemic, which continues to climb in cases and deaths. Just today, another 944 cases and 4 deaths were reported. As KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen tells us, this additional aid for businesses was prompted by the county's slip into the purple tier.
Like virtually every restaurant in San Diego, Bivouac Cider Works in North Park is struggling.
We modified our hours during the entire shutdown, and we've been open Thursday through Sunday from noon until nighttime.
Owner Laura Worm says outdoor dining and to-go orders have been a lifeline. Given that COVID-19 infections are skyrocketing, she says she's willing to follow public health rules. But she also understands why some other businesses don't feel like that's an option.
Businesses have been forced to pivot over and over again, but I think it gets exhausting and it really gets demoralizing. So I think at this last round of shutdowns, shutting down indoor dining again, I think people are just fed up and they're really scared that this is their last hope.
Restaurants, gyms, movie theaters, and museums are among those businesses that have had to close or scale back operations since San Diego County fell into the state's most stringent purple tier for reopening restrictions earlier this month. County officials hope the additional $20 million will be an incentive for those businesses to comply with the new restrictions. County Supervisor Greg Cox says he wants businesses to be allowed to operate without endangering public health.
But in the interim, this is, I think, one small step we can take to try to help those businesses that have been struggling and hopefully help them hang on for a little bit longer until we get the vaccine readily available for everybody.
Worm received money from the CARES Act, yet it didn't go far. She's hopeful the Biden administration turns the tide on the pandemic, but says Congress and President Trump need to pass another stimulus package now. For businesses like hers,
the time between now and January 20th could be a death sentence.
The county expects applications for the small business relief money to be on its website by tonight. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
This will not be the Thanksgiving that millions of Americans had envisioned. The coronavirus pandemic has brought twin crises, health and economic, and experts warn that both could get worse in the coming weeks. Karen Kafa now from Washington with the latest on how the presidential transition is moving forward in the midst of a somber holiday.
President-elect Joe Biden on Thanksgiving Eve praising Americans for their resilience.
This is the moment where we need to steel our spines, redouble our efforts, and recommit ourselves to the fight. Let's remember, we're all in this together.
Biden has said his family will forego their large Thanksgiving gathering, but millions have taken off to spend the holiday with family and friends despite CDC warnings against it. The nation's healthcare providers are anxious.
The decisions that we all collectively make over the next 4 days will determine whether thousands of more people die or whether we will make the small sacrifices that we need to make.
New numbers Wednesday from the Labor Department show the pandemic's continued economic toll. Another 778,000 Americans filed for unemployment benefits for the first time last week. At least 54 million Americans could soon face food insecurity, according to Feeding America, the nation's largest hunger relief organization. The number painfully illustrated at food banks across the country as families seek to put any meal on the table, let alone a Thanksgiving feast.
We're seeing thousands of people, many whom have never had to go to a food pantry before.
The Biden transition team said they received their first COVID-19 briefings from current officials Wednesday, 2 days after the Trump administration acknowledged the transition and 16 days after media outlets projected Biden to be the winner. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
The day before Thanksgiving is typically the busiest travel day of the year in the United States. We're used to seeing crowded airports and backed up freeways, but this was what traffic looked like at LAX this afternoon. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer went to San Diego International Airport, where he found many are still flying this year, even as the pandemic is exploding across the country.
Last Thursday, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a recommendation against Thanksgiving travel. It comes as an explosion of COVID-19 cases grips the nation, but airline passengers are flying at their highest rates since lockdowns began in March.
So last week was the first week since March that we had seen over 30,000 passengers each day coming and going through the terminals, and that was 3 days in a row. So again, that was not something that we've seen, since March.
The California Department of Public Health requires all individuals to wear a face covering while on airport property. Lo Piccolo also says the airport has made numerous modifications to adapt to the best social distancing and health practices during the pandemic. Victor Simones is a Utah Valley University student who flew home today for Thanksgiving. He was not wearing his mask outside.
So my university, I don't have to get tested, but they asked us to. But since I'm not going to school in person, I don't have to, so I did not get tested.
Jennifer McDonald also flew in from Utah to spend Thanksgiving with her daughter, who is a swimmer at San Diego State University. She too was without a facial covering while waiting outside.
I feel totally safe. I got COVID, got over it, fine. Everybody's wearing face masks. Airports are super clean. Airlines have never been cleaner. It's a great time to fly.
The San Diego International Airport said travelers should have a clear understanding of state and local governments' travel restrictions for wherever they are headed, including testing requirements, stay-at-home orders, and quarantine mandates. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
AAA is forecasting at least 5 million fewer travelers than last year. That's the largest one-year decrease since the Great Depression. Many people are getting COVID-19 tests before traveling. Coming up, why health experts say it's no guarantee you won't spread the virus to your loved ones. Imperial County was among the hardest hit in the state early on in the pandemic. Now a surge in cases is putting the rural region to the test again. iNews source reporter Jennifer Bowman has more.
Imperial County officials are calling it the second wave. The region's positivity rate for COVID-19 tests has doubled in the past month. But this time, leaders say they're ready and are crediting the first wave of cases with helping them prepare for the latest surge. They've added beds and staff at the county's 2 hospitals and reopened a temporary care facility. They've also requested additional testing resources and may begin mobile testing of farm workers. The county was so overwhelmed earlier this year that it transferred hundreds of coronavirus patients, including to San Diego. But officials say the new additional capacity should prevent that from happening again. For KPBS, I'm iNews.
On this story, go to inewssource.org. iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. It's back to virtual learning for all secondary schools in the Vista Unified School District. Middle and high school students will have to finish the next 3 weeks of instruction remotely. Elementary schools will continue in-person learning. The district says while it hasn't seen evidence of the virus spreading on campus, COVID-19's impact within the community is causing staffing challenges for teachers and other employees. The school board will revisit the issue at its December 15th meeting. As the pandemic continues to take its toll on schools, some teachers are finding it harder to take time off. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke with educators about the challenge of finding substitute teachers.
Since the onset of the pandemic, Courtney Green has been reluctant to take time off from her work as a 4th grade teacher. She says her students at Kellogg Elementary and the Chula Vista Elementary School District had already suffered enough through the challenges of distance learning. But when Green had to take 3 weeks off for a medical procedure in October, finding someone to fill in for her was far more difficult than she expected.
You have to ensure that you're getting a substitute who's able to log on to whichever program your school or school district is using.
And even after she found a couple substitutes, her days off were interrupted by the technical difficulties of virtual learning.
on my days that I was out on medical leave, I would still have to log on to the computer in the morning, set up the class, make the substitute the host, and then log off.
In the end, she went against her doctor's wishes and decided to cut her medical leave short.
I came back a couple days early because of just how stressful it was, working with subs and how much work I had to put in. It was basically the same amount as if I had been working.
Green says she's heard similar stories from her colleagues.
They've put off, taking mental health days or going to doctor's appointments because they don't want to have to figure this out.
District spokesman Anthony Milliken said 96% of teacher absences were filled in the month of October, but he agrees the current situation is challenging.
Because of school closures, we have far fewer in-person, professional development trainings. So in that regard, there's less of a need for subs. But on the flip side is that there are actually fewer subs generally available during this period.
Substitute teachers say 2020 has been a struggle on their end as well. Danielle Brees is a substitute teacher working in the Grossmont Union High School District. When COVID-19 first shut down schools, she immediately filed for unemployment.
Since then, I had moved, through quarantine, I had moved from where I was living to a cheaper place, kind of because of it, to be honest. So I was pretty much just making ends meet, and because I'm fully credentialed, I'm still looking for jobs.
Brees ultimately found work as a long-term sub for a teacher at West Hills High School in Santee. The teacher is working from home because he's at a greater risk of experiencing complications from COVID-19. He designs the curriculum and the assignments, and Brees supervises students in the classroom while they complete their assignments.
So I've been trying to help them with their study habits and giving them some examples of how to study and some mindfulness apps and things like that. So I'm okay, but it is impacting me a little bit to see them not doing as well as they could be.
Luckily for Brees, Grossmont Union raised the pay for substitutes after COVID hit from $115 per day to $150. So far, the district has been able to just meet its need for subs.
Their sub situation is, I'll say, strained.
Terry Stanfill is the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources at Grossmont Union High.
It's a real big part of our schools, and it's what we need to remain open. And so we felt we needed to be competitive in the county.
Stanfill worries that the shortage of subs will only get worse.
Right now it seems to be okay, but there's always a need for subs. And as other districts begin to open, we might feel more of a strain.
Back at Chula Vista Elementary, Green expects that things will improve, but she's not planning on taking any more time off.
There's also some guilt that comes with getting a substitute when teachers know that our students have already gone through so much trauma over these last 7 months, and just going out for a day to take care of an appointment is going to be even more challenging for our students.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
During the holiday season, people are racking their brains for ways to get together safely with loved ones. One way is to get a COVID test to make sure they don't have the coronavirus. But as Reed Binion explains, that is not a sure bet.
Testing rush. This is the scene all over the U.S. as people scramble to get tested for the coronavirus before holiday gatherings.
My daughters are coming home from college in 2 different places in the U.S.
But testing isn't a surefire way to make sure you're in the clear from the virus. U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Jerome Adams says those negative tests are only good for that day because of the virus's incubation period.
It takes, on average, 5 days, but up to 14 days after you've been exposed to have symptoms. A negative test yesterday or Sunday doesn't mean that you're safe tomorrow. It doesn't mean that you can relax your precautions.
It also matters what you do after you get your test.
Negative at the moment you get your test results. You can leave the testing site, say go to the grocery store, get exposed, and then contract the virus.
And for holiday travelers, that includes places like airports and gas stations. That's why the CDC and medical experts have urged people not to travel for Thanksgiving.
We are literally going to start vaccinating vulnerable people within the next couple of weeks. But we just need you, the American people, to hold on just a little bit longer. And It's not too late to have a safe holiday celebration.
For today's Health Minute, I'm Reed Binion.
With the recent spikes in COVID-19 cases, many Americans decided to change their Thanksgiving plans. A new Axios Ipsos poll finds 61% of Americans no longer having the get-together they were planning. 9% say they won't celebrate the holiday at all. When it comes to travel, 76% say it is a large or a moderate risk. 64% say even seeing family or friends is a large or moderate risk. About 1,000 adults participated in the survey. Concern over the risk of spreading COVID means Thanksgiving will be different for many of us this year. At downtown San Diego's Golden Hall, 200 Salvation Army volunteers have been feeding about 1,800 people for 30 years now, but not this year, not during a pandemic. Salvation Army Captain Sean Kelsey says instead, Thanksgiving meals will be served at the Army's 4 locations across San Diego. People can either drive up or walk up to get hot meals to go. And that's where volunteers like Adrienne Pierre come in. They've spent the last week helping get everything ready.
This is what they do every single day of the year. They support the community. So there was no way they weren't going to do something. It's how were they going to do it and how extensive were they going to do it?
People will also receive go bags containing fruit and water. While the meals are being served, the way meals are being served this year will be different. One thing won't change. Captain Kelsey says the Salvation Army will still use the opportunity to talk to people and see what they can do to help during this holiday season. With the added economic burden of the coronavirus pandemic, many more people are in need this holiday season. KPBS reporter Shalina Chatlani looks at some of the services available to help.
Thank you so much for your support. Have a great Thanksgiving.
At a drive-thru behind the Lafayette Hotel in North Park, people arrive to pick up the pies they bought.
I'm picking up 25 pies from Mama's Kitchen.
What made you decide to come here and get those pies?
Actually, every year our company purchases pies for our employees.
Customers like Salvador can buy pies from one of Mama Kitchen's 12 contactless drive-thru sites in San Diego, and the proceeds go to helping vulnerable San Diegans, says spokeswoman Jenna Novotny.
All of the funds raised here today will help to provide nutritious, medically tailored meals, home delivered to critically ill neighbors throughout San Diego. So people that are battling HIV, cancer, type 2 diabetes, congestive heart failure, chronic kidney disease, individuals who, especially right now during COVID, are really fearful of leaving their home.
I have 2 traditional apples in the back seat.
And of course, it's not just customers who are excited. So are the volunteers.
My life is pie. Mama's Kitchen is a draw because of the work that they do in the community.
Naturally, on the day before Thanksgiving, there's a lot of fundraisers popping up around town. In fact, Mama's Kitchen is selling 3,000 pies to help vulnerable San Diego families. But they're not the only ones in the giving spirit. Father Joe's Villages, where people are happy to get a warm Thanksgiving meal, but the atmosphere certainly contrasts with that of Mama's Kitchen in North Park. People here are living with issues like housing and food insecurity, which have only been magnified during the coronavirus pandemic.
It means a lot because for the simple fact, I don't have kids of my own, but I do have adopted kids, and they're in need. And the fact that I'm not able to give them all that they need to have, this is very important.
At Father Joe's Villages in East Village, that need is clear. President and CEO Deacon Jim Vargas says around 1 in 6 residents in San Diego County are experiencing some level of food insecurity.
So that's why this meal this year is particularly important. So we're bringing in, it's going to be hundreds of people who will be joining us. Even more importantly than the nutritious meal and the filling the stomach is the filling of the heart. I want people to feel a sense of connectedness. I want them to, in this time where it's hard to feel connected because of the pandemic.
The meal is not being served in a congregate setting, but outside and with social distancing and required masks. Vargas reminds people that fewer funds are coming into Father Joe's due to the pandemic and urges people to sign up for the group's annual 5K, which can be done individually.
You know, despite what's going on around you, you got to be thankful for all that is being done. You know, and there's a lot being done, so you got to be thankful for that.
Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
An unwelcome guest is expected to arrive this Thanksgiving. Santa Ana winds and dangerous fire weather conditions. Meteorologist Mark Mancuso has your forecast.
A trough moving through Southern California will bring us some gusty winds. Winds will become quite strong, developing a Thursday and a Thursday night and continuing through Friday. Those winds will gradually diminish into Saturday. We'll have a Santa Ana setting up, so we'll wind up with sunny, warm days and clear, cool nights. For tonight, we still have the marine layer as the trough brings in the flow off the water here. So we'll see temperatures in the low 40s, the clouds at Oceanside, clouds in San Diego. Ramona's in the mid-30s tonight, certainly worthy of a nice heavy jacket, and Mount Laguna is down to 28. Now, as we look at the weather for Thursday, winds will be developing down here in Southern California, spreading down to the valleys by the afternoon hours, and then continuing through the night and into the day on Friday. Take a look at our temperatures here. We'll see mid-60s Oceanside, San Diego 67. Starting off with clouds, but once that offshore flow takes over, that'll blow away the marine layer. So after the morning clouds, we'll be looking at some sunshine the next few days. Here in Borrego Springs, 73, Mount Laguna 57. Checking in on the conditions here for Friday in particular. We're looking at strong winds, and we will see temperatures starting to rise here for the end of the week, but also the potential for fires getting up there, so we'll see critical conditions. So there'll be a high fire risk, strong winds and the dry vegetation. Looking ahead temperature-wise, well, you can see it'll be milder over the weekend, should be quite pleasant. As we take you to the inland areas, mid-70s, and as we head our way up to the mountains, plenty of sunshine here. Looks like a beautiful weekend. And into the deserts, it should be pleasant with sunshine. And for KPBS News, I am meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
More veterans are coming forward to share their problems accessing mental health care at the San Diego VA following an iNews Source investigation last week. iNews Source investigative reporter Brad Racino has this update.
After our investigation, 4 more veterans and therapists have reached out to say they too are experiencing delays with the La Jolla agency. That makes more than 20 people this year who have all gone on the record to say the same thing. Something's wrong at the San Diego VA. Interviews and emails show the problem appears to stem from how the agency is interpreting the 2018 Mission Act, a federal law meant to expand veteran access to health care. Although the VA had contracted with a company to perform a variety of services connecting vets with outside therapists as part of that law, the VA recently opted to take over those tasks and now can't keep pace with the demand. When questioned a couple weeks ago about the changes and the impacts they're having on local veterans, a VA spokesperson wouldn't acknowledge any problems. When asked again about the problems this week after more vets and therapists came forward, the VA did not respond. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source investigative reporter Brad Racino.
For more on that story, go to inewssource.org. iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. Do face masks expire? Probably not, according to the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA has posted updated guidance about face coverings. The agency says surgical masks may still offer protection even after they've passed their designated shelf life. However, you should not reuse them. Disposable masks should be discarded after use. That also goes for N95 respirators unless you disinfect it using an approved method of decontamination.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump gives a full pardon to his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Here's another look at our top stories. Help for businesses affected by San Diego County's slide into the most restrictive purple tier is on the way. During a special meeting today, the Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to approve $20 million in aid. Today is typically one of the busiest travel days of the year. Because of the pandemic, AAA is forecasting at least 5 million fewer travelers than last year. However, millions of Americans are still flying for the holiday, despite the CDC urging people to celebrate at home. San Diego International Airport says it's seeing levels of passengers it hasn't had since March. And here's a look at the latest COVID-19 numbers just released by San Diego County. Today, 944 new cases and 4 deaths were reported. That comes a day after a new single-day record was set of more than 1,500 cases. The Mission Valley Stadium that was once home to the Chargers, Padres, and Aztecs will soon be no more, but you can bring home a piece of it. Construction on a smaller venue for the Aztecs is already underway in the SDCCU Stadium parking lot. Next week, SDSU will begin selling some of the old stadium's 65,000-plus seats. A pair will set you back at least $300. There are also parking lot signs and seat section signs, including this one for section, well, they're all rolling by, 55. There we go, honoring Chargers great Junior Seau.
Unfortunately, we can't save the stadium. That's bigger than us, but we can save a piece of it for you.
Heritage Global Partners will auction 645 items from the stadium online from December 14th to the 16th. Opening bids start from $25 to $50. Proceeds will be reinvested into the project to build a 35,000-seat stadium for the Aztecs. That is set to open in 2022. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening and a happy Thanksgiving.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.